Hi, this is Bill Prater, and welcome to Business Builder Show, where we feature champions in their respective industries from all over the planet. Our mission is to provide you with timely, provocative, and actionable resources that will inspire, promote, and accelerate your quest for business excellence. Right now, we're going to find out the overlooked source of the brilliant workplace culture, and David Deane-Spread is going to walk us through exactly what that is. David honed his skills leading and developing covert operators in the military, law enforcement, and a discrete agency before deploying them as a CEO and managing director in both public and private companies in both Australia and Europe. For the last 25 years, he's been coaching board directors and CEOs across the spectrum of business and government. He focuses on those aspects that are at the root of how people perform and behave in both planning and execution to become the publicly recognized preferred employer and provider in the space. His clients stay with him, some for over 20 years through various iterations of their entrepreneurial journey, and even now, intergenerational, maybe fourth, fifth generation, I'm thinking, huh, David?
The son of.
The son of, okay. So tell us, David, who do you serve? I know you gave us a little bit of a little glimpse at who they are, but who are they specifically?
Thanks, Bill. And firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to your show. I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk to you again, second time. Look, Bill, my preferred client, my ideal client is the conscientious leader who has 30 staff or more and is seeking to create the culture that he knows or she knows will actually set that business up to be the most attractive employer in their space. And then once they've achieved that, they then have the tools and the means to become the preferred provider in their space. And that then gives them a high value for the business, whether they want to grow it or sell it or exit it. So it's really, and I encourage them to have that vision, to create that vision. And sometimes I say, yeah, well, I want to grow, or I want to set it up to sell it or sell my shareholding in it, or I'd like to exit splendidly. And then it's a matter of saying, is the business ready? No, it's not. And then we really get to understand what that person is seeking, and we tailor our approach to that vision.
Well, is there a common problem that these people share, or is it a variety of problems that are holding them back?
Yeah, that's actually a penetrating question, because the commonality is the leadership there's a number of things. First of all, the difficult behaviors and difficult people in the business, they really sabotage the intentions of the business to move forward and drag it back. And some of those people are actually high value people. In other words, they know a lot. They're very competent in their role, but basically they're, if I could use the word, they're assholes. And the leader is often, and they're compromised in a sense. The leader's compromised in a sense because they've been in the business a while, these difficult people, and they've got a relationship. And so it's difficult for the leader to turn around and say, change or you're gone. And so they don't know how to do that very well. So that's one problem. The other problem is, and I'm seeing this pretty much everywhere, there's a culture, and I think it's mainly in the West, there's a culture of doing more with less. And as a result, I think some CFOs are behaving like cost accountants, and they're seeing everything going out of the business as a cost, i.e. payroll. And they treat payroll as a cost, and they like to minimize that and try and get that balance right. But it's from a cost reduction perspective. And I've asked them to flip that on its head and say, no, that's an investment. and treat it like an investment. How do you look after investments? Very differently to the way you look after a cost. And so you invest in your investment.
That's very
And it's
nice.
not
I
about
like.
growing the payroll, it's about growing the value of what the payroll's supporting, i.e. your people. And the businesses, in my opinion, if the leadership cohort, and that's from the frontline leader all the way through to the senior leader, most senior leader, if they don't have time to actually lead the way they'd really like to, then they're not right-sized. And most often we're finding the leader's not got time to lead. All they've got time to do is the administrative compliance side of leadership. And the rest of the time they're doing the tasks that they can't delegate because the team's already overloaded. And they've still got this mentality of do more with less, you
Maybe
know?
you could give us a story. I love stories. I talked about that earlier. So
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
a case study or something of how you would typically go about solving this problem. How do you find your clients? How do you get them positioned to be able to be willing, if you will, to take your advice and counsel? And then what does the solution or the outcome look like typically?
Yeah, okay. The normal way is for people to call me and say, look, Joe Blow recommended you to me. I've got this problem. I've got a very high value employee who's really causing some of my other good people to leave. Can you help me? And so I then say, yes, I can. Let me come and have a conversation with you. Let's sit down, have a cup of coffee. Let me discover more. And I don't know any leader worth their salt who's not trying to grow or improve the business. So there's always an improvement mentality in the leadership. And I tap into that. I ask them, what are you trying to achieve? Let's say in the next 3 years, what's your vision for the next 3 years? And that'll quickly tell me whether they're wanting to scale the business or whether they want to move into new territory or whether they want to consolidate for a while or whether they're looking for a buyout or a complete exit. So we get that. Then I say, okay, so where do you think you are in that journey? What's the main thing holding you back apart from why you've called me? And it normally it eventually turns out to either or a combination of culture is not quite right, and they don't, and they're not happy with their systems and processes. Now, I'm not the systems and process person. That's not me. So I say, look, if your primary focus is systems and processes, I can help you with the culture. And I believe that the culture needs to be sorted out first because they're the people who are going to be operating, creating, and then ongoing using the processes and systems. And if the culture is not right, it'll show up in the processes and systems. So begin with the culture. And when we get to the point where you're happy with the way the culture is going, that's the time to bring in your systems person if you need to. But it's not me. I'll be upfront with you. That's not what I do. I'm focusing on the people because at the end of the day, the people create the systems and operate them. If they're dysfunctional, so will be your systems. So we get that sorted out. And then I begin to look at there's a number of things that happen. There's the attitudes, the behaviors, and the conversations that take place in the business cause everything to happen, right? Attitudes, behaviors, and conversations. And that's the ABC of business. And I know that, and everyone knows when they think about it, that those attitudes, those behaviors, and those conversations are actually what makes the business happen and the way the business happens. From the way we treat each other, the way we treat our resources, the way we treat our stakeholders, and especially the way we treat our clients. And so we focus on the ABC and we give them the skill of attitudinal competence, which is done through both workshops and coaching. And that's the ability to choose your best attitude for what has happened, what is happening, and what might happen, and not be stuck with habitual attitudes. Most of us have habitual attitudes. We then look at the effective leadership behavior and what does that mean, knowing that it's underpinned and created fundamentally by attitude. And then we learn how to have the right conversations at the right time with the right people in the right way. Because all mistakes and problems in the business are there right now because the right leader has not had the right conversation with the right person at the right time in the right way. And so we have an existing problem because it hasn't been dealt with. And so we look at all those and look at the skill set required to have a difficult conversation. And we go through real-time practice. And I will then I will then be the asshole, if you like, and get the CEO or whoever's going to be dealing with that person to have that conversation. That's one choice they have. The other choice is that I will deal with that person. And the aim is, and that normally is the fastest route to recovery, if you like. And so we deal with those people, and then we actually look at how do we apply the attitudes, behaviors, and conversations to what I call the business vortex. Now, the business vortex is that part of the business where everything is decided and decisions are made and agreements are made. And those are in informal meetings around the coffee cooler, the water cooler and the coffee machine. Then there's the formal meetings of the various types. Then there's the process of alignment and how aligned is that leadership cohort. They want to be aligned. They intend to be aligned, and they sometimes think they are aligned, and they're not. And when they're not aligned, there's a waste of money, waste of opportunity. But they think they're aligned, and they're actually not. And I test them. I ask them what's your major objective over the next 90 days? What values are the ones that need to be worked on? What are the values? Yeah, what is the vision? What's the most important number and data and the actual quantity that the company has to create in the next 90 days? And I test them. I say, write it down. Don't talk to one another. Write it down. And you come up with all these different answers. I thought, well, is that a sign of your alignment or not? And they go, wow. And so I've created actually a format for alignment, and I advise them, and I ensure that they have a 90-day cadence at least of alignment with not just senior leaders, but the entire leadership cohort. When you get them on the same page, things work. But often you've got the senior leadership team is more aligned than the middle management, and the middle management's more aligned than the frontline supervisor, and the frontline supervisors are operating in silos, and they tolerate that. There's a huge amount of tolerance for that level of misalignment. And I guess they have the strategic meeting at the beginning of the year, and they do come out of that aligned. There's no doubt about that. They've got a process for that. But it's like a car on the road. Your wheels will go out of alignment particularly in the bumpy road, on a country road. Your wheels will eventually go out of alignment. So when you get your car serviced, you get your wheels realigned. Running a dynamic business is no different. You're going to go out of alignment after you've been operating for a couple of weeks even. Things have changed. So we focus on alignment, then we focus on delegation. So when a leader delegates work to an individual or a team, we've got a whole range of ways of doing that delegation. And many times that delegation process isn't good enough. In the law enforcement space, we have an acronym called SMEACS, which is situation, mission, execution, administration, and command and control and safety. So that's the order of how we delegate the work. In project management, it's slightly different. It's CPQQRT, which is context, purpose, quality, quantity, timing, resources and timing. I'm finding in today's world that the complexity of tasks and what we all are required to do, none of those are enough. And so I've created the Complete Delegation Framework, which is 12 points to be considered. And things like, have we got clarity around what our responsibilities are in this delegation? Have we got clarity around the authorities we've got to call for more resources or to even change direction? Have we got clarity around not just the time by which the task has to be done, but the time by which milestones have to be achieved? And what happens if we're not doing that? What's the early warning system that we're running off course? And then what are the consequences of doing the job really well versus the consequences of just doing it just as per the bare minimum? What about when the job's not done that well? What are the consequences going to be? Where are the risks? And have we got clarity before we get out of this room? Has everyone got clarity? And that means you've got to ask me questions. And so we then also, now I've got that as an online course because I'm actually asking, I don't want just the leadership and the supervisors to know the delegation process, which is basically what companies do if they do have a process. I want 100% of the people in the business to know the delegation process. And that's a way of helping emerging leaders get used to delegation, because delegation is that point of giving the work to someone to do. If you don't know how to do that, what's going to happen? That's where we have a breakdown in quality of work, or work getting done poorly or not getting done at all because they didn't know how to do it properly. And so we make sure that everyone in the business knows how to do that. And it's an online course for 50 minutes. And they automatically get a certificate once they've completed the course. So the management now have got a way of making sure that everyone's done it. And so now everyone's on the same page in the business. 100% of the staff now know what the delegation process is and how it's going to be deployed. But it's not rocket science. It's just a process. And my clients are taking that up. In fact, I've got a client that I'm working with at the moment, and I'm running a series of workshops for their entire leadership cohort. And they love this company is a diving company, but have moved into robotics. So instead of sending divers down, they've got robots that go down and do the cleaning of tanks and all of that sort of thing. Massive business. And they're getting 100% of their staff to do that Complete Delegation Framework, because they know that on its own is going to lift the productivity and performance of the business by many percentage points.
Sure.
So we do that. We work with I primarily work with the leadership team, the senior leadership team, and then I encourage the senior leadership team to do the work that I do on the next layers down. Because there's no point in me disempowering them by doing it for them. And what we want is leaders to be, the leaders need to be the trainers inside the business and the coaches. And that's what we did in the military and where I came from. And leaders who train with their troops build trust far quicker than during normal operations. And so there's a massive change in the culture. I'm not trying to turn them into paramilitary people because that's not appropriate, but I am trying to get them to see the level of communication, the level of knowledge that a leader needs to have about his or her people is a lot higher than what's currently the norm. And it really is a focus on the humanity of the business. And that requires a lot of self-discipline from the leadership, no doubt about that. But if you look at any company that's doing really well, the self-discipline amongst the leadership cohort is high. And then that is modeled
David,
for.
let me ask you this question. I think I understand, what you're talking about pretty well, being in a similar space, more on the process side, as you already pointed out. However, there's a lot of competition out there that you face on a day-to-day basis. So can you tell our audience, our listeners, how you differentiate yourself vis-a-vis your competition?
Yeah, very clearly. Thanks, Bill. I've had the lived experience leading highly skilled people, people who can actually operate on their own remotely and in high risk and high stakes situations. I've had to step into the danger ground with them. I've learnt that how difficult it is to be a leader in trying situations and having difficult conversations. And the most difficult conversation that I've had is really telling family that I've lost their husband. That is difficult and that hurts. And so when you do that and you realize that we're all human and we know the reaction is going to be not great, but we become more skilled at it, and it's about being empathetic and caring. I didn't want to, but every time I've done it, and I've done it on a few occasions, unfortunately, I've not been able to withhold crying myself when I'm with them. And it really is quite an interesting experience, let me put it that way. But having that ability to have that empathy with the leader and the leader's people is something that I have, and the unique difficulties that leaders, the loneliness of being a leader. I know what that feels like. I've made many mistakes myself, so I'm conscious of our fallibility. But what I think also, certainly from a pure business perspective, I have my own IP. The Complete Delegation Framework is mine. And no one see it's not nowhere else. It's not like SMEAX, which is widely used. It's not like CPQQRT, which is widely used. Complete Delegation Framework has 12 points on it and a whole system around creating the perfect delegation process, if you like, complete. That's different. Attitudinal competence, the method for training for attitude. I did that. I created that in the beginning when I was training covert operators. We found that there was every time something went wrong in an operation and we did the investigation, we found that it was down to the attitude of the operator in the moment. And I realized, and this is back in the 70s, I realized that there's a need to train for attitude. And in those days, they didn't believe that they didn't believe you could. And I said, I believe you can, because I've had to train myself to adapt my attitude for what I do, going from being an overt operator to a covert operator. That takes there's a mind space, a shift there that has to take place. There's a skill set that has to be built, not only in surveillance, but in attitude, in your mindset. And so therefore it's trainable, and I'm going to put it into a trainable format. And I created the program for covert operators from an attitudinal perspective. And then when I eventually left in 1990, I adapted it for the civilian leadership components and for general personal self-development. Because at the end of the day, our attitude drives everything, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. Now we're moving a little bit into your own business and how you built it. So what were the major milestones, David, when you decided back in 1990 to start building your own business? And what were the major pluses, major minuses, major lessons that you learned along the way building your own business?
Yeah, look, I had leaving the type of work that I was doing and transitioning to being a civilian, I found really difficult. I didn't quite know how to deploy the skill set that I had acquired. But I eventually got into business as a CEO. I managed to convince people that I could lead their business, particularly as I didn't need the technical knowledge, I needed the people knowledge. I had good technical people around me, which I did even in the government organizations. I made sure that I had subject matter experts to back me up and to double check me. And so I did the same thing in the civilian area, and I moved into the publishing field and into mining equipment and healthcare equipment. Moved in that space. and had the subject matter experts. So that then I then realized I had to actually change my leadership style from largely command and control to a more humane and less military and more servant leadership approach, which is what I advocate now as a really an authentic leader who cares. And so I then had my flying instructor. This is how the business actually started. My flying instructor was an electrician by trade, and he went back to his trade. And he just asked me, he said, David, and I had just bailed out of my CEO and MD roles in Australia. I'd been operating in Ireland as well, and then Australia. And Ireland was the base for us to sell our product in Europe. And I'd come back to Australia, and during that time, and I went bankrupt, by the way. That's
There's a lesson.
that's a big lesson. I went bankrupt for $6 million. Should have been 10, but I spent 3 years working off $4 million, and but by 1990, I was burnt out because I was doing. It's a complex story, but I was running businesses as well as being a contractor for the government. So in the discrete agency, and it all came crashing down in 1990, and I left everything. I was burnt out. I was trying to just completely burnt out. My marriage had gone south. And so transitioning was really tough. I found that there's two things saved me. Number one, I wanted to learn to play the didgeridoo, the Aboriginal instrument. And so I did.
Okay.
And I mastered the playing of the didgeridoo and how to make them. And so during my bankruptcy period, because I went bankrupt at the same time as leaving everything, leaving the contracting work that I was doing for the government, leaving Ireland, coming back to Australia, getting into didgeridoo. And then for the next 3 years, I made my living out of selling didgeridoo and teaching people how to play the didgeridoo. So I was being entrepreneurial in my own right. And that was quite good. That was quite good. I enjoyed that. But in the end, it was not mentally challenging for me. And so I started to look around. And at that time, my flying instructor, Peter King, said, will you help me grow my electrical business? And I said, sure. And for the next 3 years, we just put this whole thing into place. I put all the things that I've just been talking about, which I had done for my COVID operations team and my other businesses that I was involved with in Ireland and Europe. And I put them into place for his company. And at the time, he only had 17 people. But at the end of 3 years, he had a long list of people wanting to join the business, electricians. He'd trebled his revenue, and he'd won his industry award for 3 years in a row, which had never happened before or since. And really grew the company. And that was in 1999 by the time we got to that 3-year mark. And he sold the business in 2017 for millions of dollars to a public company. And I'd been with him all the way. And by this time, he had over 300 staff and was based in every state of Australia. And headquartered not in Perth, but in Sydney. And so it was a very successful exit. And today I am coaching his son, who's the CEO of his own separate company that he started in 2018. And so I'm now coaching that CEO, who's the son of Peter, and his CFO, who I'll be on a Zoom call after this one. And we've taken that company and they specialize in providing drivers and vehicles for Uber and the rideshare industry.
Oh,
And especially electric vehicles. And so and they've got offices all around Australia and in London. And they've only just received the pathway that we're following, an award for being one of the most favored companies for people to work in.
oh, great.
So they've got that accolade. And that's because we're applying the process of this ABC, attitudes, behaviors, and conversations, dealing with difficult behaviors, getting them out of the way, getting them overcome, focusing on running meetings properly, focusing on proper alignment, proper delegation, and proper coaching by leaders. And that's how we embed the whole thing in the business. And now they're in a position where they are improving rapidly their systems and processes. And of course, AI now is helping them a lot to systemize processes. So and I actually, I'll get to that when you ask me, when you ask me a question. There's a particular question I'm hoping you're going to ask me, and I think you will, but it's where I'm struggling personally in the business. But AI is helping these people to develop their systems, which is where I'm struggling at the moment. I know I run a practice. I don't run a business. I deliberately don't employ people to do the work that I do, other coaches. I did try, and I found it not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to spend my time coaching coaches to do what I do. I love doing what I'm doing, and I feel really responsible for the client and for the client getting a result. And so I made a decision that I would run a practice, not a business.
Okay. But
And
what is it
so
that's holding you, what is it that's holding you back then?
what's holding me back is making up my mind around the best way to use AI in systems and processes within the practice. And so I'm finding I'm being overwhelmed with the range of AI
Okay.
tools that are out there and which one's going to be the best one. And at the moment, between serving my clients and paying attention to the AI element of systemizing the business and doing that in the most sensible way, I'm struggling with it. So I will get to a point soon where I'll have to bring someone in to help me. But I've got a client load that I'm going to do it during the quieter period towards the end of the year. But right now I'm all over the place. We've It's an interesting thing. In Australia, they've recently changed the law regarding leaders and businesses, making sure that bullying and harassment is dealt with, and they've criminalized the negligence of it. And so
That's,
now I'm super busy because people are getting me to come in and deal with the difficult people.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
So how can our various listeners, David, get a hold of you? What's the best way?
look, the best way would be to go to a particular link that I'll call out now. I'll just make sure I don't get it wrong. I'll blow it up and put my glasses on.
And this, of
And
course,
it's one,
will be in the show notes, everybody. So David will tell us what it is, and then in the show notes, we'll have it all typed out so you don't have to write things down right now.
yeah, that's great. It's Metatude, that's METAWUDE.com / download the master, Master Your Vortex ebook. And there's a hyphen between each of those words between download and ebook. And then it ends with a /
Okay.
Download the Master Your Vortex ebook. And that will
Download the
give them,
Master Your Vortex ebook. Okay, got it.
yeah. And they will be able to then actually follow the process that I use with my clients. And so I'm all for empowering leaders to not need me anymore. I believe that's the most ethical way to run my business. And consequently, at the end of the day, they do want me because they're successful and they have other iterations of entrepreneurship, and I stay with them, or they keep asking me back, which is great. And they keep referring me. So my business is 100% referral and repeat business, which which is probably good because I don't think I'm a very good marketer. I like doing what I'm doing for my clients. I love doing what I'm doing with my clients.
Sing a
So
dance card full.
satisfying.
So,
So I missed
what's
that.
the one? I said that's called keeping your dance card full.
It is. It is. It is. Yeah.
Yes. So, what's the one question that maybe I should have thought of and asked you, David, that I didn't? And then what's the answer to that unasked question?
That's look. So I guess that question would be, if I was only allowed to help my clients with one thing, what would it be? And I'm very clear about the answer to that. And that is, I would help them to master the power of their attitudes. In other words, I would ensure that they became attitudinally competent, able to choose their best thoughts and feelings, take control of their mind. Everything we do as humans begins in the mind. And most people think that they've got control of their thoughts, but they actually are controlled by their thoughts. And I'm saying, you've got a mind. You're not your mind. You have a mind. You have to master your mind. Your mind's not enough to run the show. You've got to run your mind. And you've got to learn how to think on manual, not on automatic. And you've got to choose each thought carefully. And it's hard work, but you've got to do it. The moment you have an automatic thought, you're just running on a faulty belief system. And you keep on making the same mistakes because you're doing the same thing, hoping you'll get a different result. But if you keep doing it that way, you're going to keep getting the mistakes. So we teach attitudinal competence. And if you've got attitudinal competence, then you've got the foundation to be able to go in any direction you want. But because you've now got control over your thoughts and your feelings. You now know how to sleep at night. You now know how to get rid of unwanted feelings. You now know how to think more effectively, particularly improve your critical thinking. You're no longer operating automatically. You're now in control of your thinking system. If you're in control of your thinking system, you will find a right path for you, whether you're a leader or a human being simply wanting to live.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, David. Appreciated your wisdom and your empathy. You mentioned that multiple times. Everybody, in closing, let's focus on the single fact that our businesses do not become extraordinary in a single moment. Instead, they get there as a result of the owner, the leader first, creating a strategic vision. Second, employing a management system to execute that vision. And number three, leveraging high performance teams. You can get all of that for yourself. Just go to my YouTube channel called at Business Mastery Pro, and you'll get your hands on it. Compliments of Bill Prater. Thanks for listening. David, thanks for spending your time with us today.
Thank you, Bill. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.